Hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I am Jonas Holdeman.
And I'm Joe Barnhart, and we want you to know that if you do or don't believe in God, you should not be alone. We want to welcome you to join us in our discussion. Right here in East Tennessee, we find people who have what's called a rationalistic viewpoint and without supernaturalism, agnostics, atheists, supernaturalists, all kinds. It's a show for all people.
And today's topic is, as you can see on your screen, deals with conflict resolution.
Conflict resolution. It's a program devoted to people who want to talk rationally about things, if we can. Go ahead.
Okay.
And I want you to know if you have a sponsors, the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. And the former group meets in Barley's, what time today? About 5:30.
5:30.
And you are welcome to come for discussions and just pleasant interchange. And
So look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table. As Matt Dillahunty of the Atheist Experience said, everyone is welcome to our happy hour for food, drink, and conversation. Mm-hmm. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. Uh-huh. The Rationalists of East Tennessee have several regular monthly meetings. First and third Sunday mornings of the month are usually lectures with lively roundtable discussions. Mm-hmm. These are held in the cafeteria annex in the Goins building at Pellissippi State Community College. The program starts at 10:30, but come early for coffee and conversation. On the second Sunday, we hold a Skeptics Book Club discussion, and on the fourth Sunday, we are alternating with a get-together that we call a Reflections meeting, alternating with meetings to play board games and so on. With regard to that book club, there's going to be a change in venue. It's moving to a different place. It will be Books A Million, and we'll learn more about that at the mid-break.
Oh, okay. And later in the show, we'll give you our information, the website, and so forth, including times and locations, and we'll give you our phone number on the screen there. So, but let's go into, have you got any news?
Have I got any news? Well, I guess the only news I have, I was kind of amused with the Dilbert cartoon in the Knoxville News Sentinel. Mm-hmm. Today, the pointy-head boss was saying something about it takes money to make money. Mm-hmm. And Dilbert said, well, where'd the first money come from? and the boss said, from God? And Dilbert said, you better sound more confident when you say that.
That's not one of the 10 Commandments, is it?
Oh.
Okay.
So how did today's topic come about, Joe?
Well, two things. One, there's a minister in town dealing with this, and maybe we're going to try to get her on the program. And then, of course, I have a very good friend in Texas, in Dallas, who does a lot of conflict resolution around the country. And he teaches at SMU there in Dallas. And he and I have done some work together, and we'll continue to do work together on some of his ideas. And he wants some of my ideas, and we, just put them together and see what we can come up with. But he does a very good job going around to different corporations and companies and hospitals and different places when they have conflicts. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes he goes when they are afraid they will, and so he tries to lay the foundation so that they can avoid the conflict.
Yeah.
And this only happens because they have people working there. If they didn't have people, it wouldn't be that big a problem. So today, our topic is going to deal with this, and I thought we'd start with, why don't we talk about emotions as what?
Okay. Joe, you prepared the script. Is this part of the work that you're doing with this?
Yeah, this is Dr. Anthony Piccioni. He's an Italian, and I told him, I said, I'd want to experiment with some of our ideas on this program, and he said that would be a good idea, and that way if we get shot down, he won't use them anymore.
Oh,
by the way, we had some good callers last time, and I hope we can get some more. Well, go.
well, I had to chuckle at his name there and wondered about the parents playing a joke on him with Tony Pignoni.
I think that's an Italian word for pigeon.
Oh. Oh, okay. Well, this first topic is titled Emotion and Facts. And I think Joe's trying to say that emotions must be considered, the emotions in a situation must be considered as part of the facts of that situation.
Part of reality, yeah.
Okay, so he says, Cynthia Ford has not yet faced the fact that she loved two men, two good men who seemed to care for her. No, she hadn't planned to fall in love. Whoever created the phrase fall in love must have misunderstood it. Misunderstood that it wasn't something that came about with careful deliberation and forethought. But Cynthia was standing on the precipice of love. Yes, her feelings for these two men were facts. Now what? Second, Dr. Jonathan Holt did not enjoy working with Nathan Landon, who at times could be downright irritating to Holt. But Landon was an invaluable colleague, honest and thorough, and a good friend of Holt's chief surgeon. Nevertheless, Holt resented Landon's condescending attitude towards him, an attitude that bordered on contempt. So standing out in the middle of these emotions of resentment, feelings of condescension, and perhaps Holt's occasional feeling of injustice was the hard reality that Dr. Holt enjoyed his work, or at least most of it. I can sympathize with that. And he knew that at his age it would be difficult to find another position. If human beings were complex computers, emotional reverberations would not be variables to take into consideration. We do not hesitate to replace a computer with a newer version if we find it advantageous to do so. Computers have no feeling. We don't call in a computer to say, "I'm sorry, John, but we're going to have to let you go. Your performance just doesn't measure up." Or the office upstairs says you need to clean out your desk and sign out. I can remember kind of feelings of a personality associated with machinery, and a lot of people talk that way. In the world of business, education, medicine, or whatever people have positions of employment and management, there exist those realities called emotions. This is another way of saying that human beings are not mere things, like pieces of furniture to be shifted around merely for our convenience. In short, emotions are facts, and to pretend that these facts are not there is to be in denial. To be sure, while a sociopath might recognize that other people have feelings and emotions, he or she might elect to use those emotions to serve his own purpose and to dismiss the feelings of others if doing so advances his purpose. Ironically, one piece of machinery might have a personality even though we do not regard it as a person. It has its own characteristics, and a good mechanic will be able to deal appropriately with those characteristics.
Yeah, you do that a lot, don't you?
An organization, like a complicated electronic device, has its own personality. A sensible manager who comes into the organization afresh needs to deal with the hard fact that while companies or organizations will have some characteristics in common, each has its own personality.
Okay, so that means that that all of these variables are facts that have to be dealt with, and to pretend that they aren't facts is to not be very realistic.
This business of a personality of machines kind of reminds me of way back, 55 years or so ago, I was, while I was an undergraduate, I was working at a TV station in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I was an engineer. And so in the control room, there were all of these engineers, the ones who monitored the transmitter and switching equipment and cameras and all of this kind of stuff. And they were just beginning to get into color television. And so in the back of the room, there was this RCA color console. Now, they weren't broadcasting it, but they could see what was coming in over the network. But that console had a problem, and their approach to fixing that problem was when it went on to blink, they would go over and bang on it in a particular place, and it would come back on. so they knew just how to deal with that.
Well, you know, some people used to treat children this way, and I watched a Western once, and I noticed the guy would slap his wife around the way you're talking about, and I can imagine what my mother married a Texan, but she was an East Tennessee woman. I don't think she would have tolerated it. But in some of these Westerns, I noticed the women were treated as if they could just be slapped around, and as if they were pieces of machinery. And that's the point I'm trying to make, and I think you would agree, is that people do have emotions, and at the rock bottom of emotions are feelings of pain and pleasure. And then you can make this more complicated, but that's, I think, at the rock bottom. And we still have the phrase, my feelings were hurt. And it is painful. Most of us know what it means to be insulted. I remember a guy once said to me, you are, and there were 3 letters, and I didn't retaliate because it occurred to me, well, everybody has a right to his own opinion. And that's all there was to it. But I thought if I had retaliated, it could have been a big explosion. And later his wife called me and apologized for him. But
yeah, well, I mean, literally, I don't think he meant what he said.
He was quite mad.
He meant it as an insult.
He meant it as an insult, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I guess I took the position, if a dog barks at me, I don't argue with him. It's just a bark. And at that point, I figure he was not at his best. And so don't waste his time and mine, and later on we can talk. But at that time, it would have been a useless thing, and I think later when his wife called me, she recognized it. It was useless. And he may have had a good point, you know, but he could have expressed it differently, I thought. But all of us have encountered that sort of thing, and in the business world, and in the medical world, where people have to work with each other or on faculties, we have to remember our colleagues and our fellow workers do have feelings, and they're not just pieces of machinery.
That old saying, sticks and stones might break my bones, but words will never hurt me. There's really a fallacy in that.
Yeah, it is. It is a fallacy. And so, starting with the fact that emotions are here and a part of who we are, since we're not robots or pieces of furniture, then I wanted to deal with the question of anxiety, because we all have anxiety. Often the difference between anxiety and fear is maybe fear is we know what we're afraid of, whereas with anxiety, we're in a state of kind of fear, but we can't nail down what it is. There's a certain vagueness, but it makes us very uncomfortable.
It's kind of a fear of a situation rather than fear of an object.
Yeah. And part of the way to try to handle our anxiety is try to figure out what it is that's making us this way. Or, I notice sometimes I'll have a dream, and it's very annoying and disturbing, and when I wake up I say to myself, okay, it's a dream. It's just a dream. And so I start counting the number of capitals in each state. That's the way I put myself to sleep. Instead of trying to figure out what the crisis was in this, otherwise I'll be awake all night. And so sometimes we have to figure out how to deal with some anxiety, and sometimes I think you would agree, sometimes we have some real fear of some real thing outside, and we haven't yet nailed down what it is. And so part of the job is to try to figure out what it is that's bothering us so that we can develop our options for dealing with it. But all of us, in fact, anybody who has not experienced anxiety is very likely already dead. I mean, that's part of just being a finite mortal. And so let's deal with vulnerability, because all of us have vulnerability. We go to a doctor. Why? Because we're vulnerable physically. We go to the dentist. We're vulnerable. Every now and then you'll meet a man that says, I'm on my own, I don't ask for help. But the guys drive on roads that other people paved for him. and we all forget how much help we receive daily.
Yeah,
other people.
I still remember years ago when Hillary Clinton came out with the book titled "It Takes a Village to Raise a Child." There was so much criticism that I heard of that.
Well, she was
thesis.
She was so right, and I spoke to a neighbor the other day, just three or four doors up, and thanked her for talking with my granddaughter, and she is so good. And I can tell the big difference with my granddaughter by going up and visiting with the neighbor, and the neighbor needs help sometimes, and my granddaughter needs help. And I think it's wonderful to have neighbors and school teachers and others and relatives upon whom we are dependent to help us. So we're all in a state of vulnerability and dependence. And I'm grateful to the person who made this chair that he knew what he was doing. And so my back is not now in a bad shape. So would you say that vulnerability appears on many fronts?
Yes. It's probably one of the things that when we're young, we have our parents who are there to protect us.
Yes.
And then comes the teenage years when the teen knows everything, trying to break loose, and often creates strained relations with the parents. But then later, as adults, one begins to realize the value of the support that parents provide.
The older you get, the more you realize how important your parents were. So it takes time to do that, I think. The people who took you to the dentist. Just little things. So because vulnerability appears on many fronts, there remains no guaranteed defense against it. The real challenge is to reduce vulnerability without becoming either paranoid or thinking that all friendship is a facade and we don't need friends and all friendship is deception. Have you ever met someone who really thought friendship is really just a manipulated technique?
Fortunately, not that I can
I've worked with people like that who just did not grasp what friendship, fortunately very few, because most people catch on. But I've worked with a few people who simply, seemingly, just did not grasp what just basic elementary friendship is that you develop with a dog. You know, that's it. And then, so for some, love is not a reality. I'm convinced there's some people who think love is simply a game, and it's a way of trying to find the weakness of another person so that you can take unfair advantage of it.
Yeah, there's certainly domestic disputes that seem to revolve around that. Well, Joe, I understand we have a call waiting.
Good.
So, caller, could you give us your name, nickname, please?
It's Charles from Central Illinois.
Oh, hello there, Charles.
St. Charles.
Yeah, I've been busy the last couple of weeks, so I haven't been able to call in.
Oh, have you been caught up in this storm that swept across the area?
We had about a half-inch come down and some pretty nice winds, but nothing like we got on the East Coast.
Yes.
Yeah, we had a little dusting this morning, what can we do for you today, Charles?
I understand today's topic is conflict resolution. And it seems to be one of the worst problems is miscommunication due to ideological differences.
I think you're dead right. Go ahead.
I remember reading an account of what one person would mean by a specific set of words, like an American businessman would say, yes, we'll see if we can get this done. And a Japanese businessman would say, yes, we will see if we can get this done. They would have different attitudes towards the words, what they meant. So they would get both cultural and physical, ideological differences showing up. And they'd miscommunicate.
Yes, this friend of mine, Anthony Piccione, he's very much into international conflicts in the business world. And he would agree with you 100%, I think. Cultural differences. Go ahead. You were making another point.
And how this can get exaggerated by people playing dominance games with each other. And how religion can often be one of the factors in there, like when Pope Francis shut down all his churches. I think it was Francis or Benedict. Benedict shut down all the churches near the Holy Sepulchre because in protest of a mosque being built within like 500 yards or something like that of the Holy Sepulchre. So there are a lot of ways for people to miscommunicate through dominance games and cultural differences. I still remember watching this so-called mosque within the Ground Zero Mosque, which wasn't a mosque in New York City, and how people would blindly condemn it out of hand without actually finding out what's going on. And this causes a lot of problems when people aren't communicating properly.
Well, I think you're dead right. Communication is hard work in the first place because we have to not only present our own views, but try to get inside the viewpoint of another person. And that means... And
then you have problems when you have people with personal agendas sticking their noses into there.
Yeah.
Very recently, Mike Huckabee, on some religious program, caught this on Right Wing Watch, said, well, one of the principal reasons he's thinking of running for the presidency is to stop a secular theocracy from taking over the United States. And I still can't wrap my head around that phrase, secular theocracy, but apparently he's kind of on the fear-mongering side.
Well, it's basically, even the language itself is a contradiction.
Yeah, I know.
So it would
But
be...
he said it with a straight face.
Yeah, so it would be nice to know what he actually is for and what he's against. And that would take clear language to spell that out.
Yeah, well, if you take the words at normally accepted first value, it's a contradiction. But if instead you take the view that the words have emotional value, and it wasn't the meaning of the words that he was probing out there with, but it was trying to evoke the emotion that the words can bring together.
Yeah. Now, oddly enough, some people in one religious tradition have used the word secular state in a very positive sense. Now, these are religious people talking. A secular state is to their advantage, by which they meant a neutral state.
A state that would not promote or deny
exactly
anybody's specific religion. Thomas Jefferson is
a good example.
Once said, it does not matter to me if my neighbor has one God, 40 gods, or no God at all. Neither breaks my leg nor picks my pocket. And the idea, which he was one he liked the most, and the thing he was most pleased with, was how he got into the Virginia House of Burgesses Constitution, the concept of wall of separation between church and state.
Yes. By the way, you were quoting, was it Huckabee?
Yes.
Now, what's interesting to me is Huckabee is a Baptist. And there are some Baptists like this, what I call Lone Ranger Baptists, who don't know their own tradition. Their own tradition is strict church-state separation. You go to a Baptist seminary, that's a major doctrine. It's church-state separation. They fought for that in England and in New England. So
I'm beginning to suspect that he's playing to the evangelical crowd, the people that fear-mongering over the loss of religious freedoms because of such things as same-sex marriage and the abortion crowd and.
Now, how are they losing their religion? I mean, their freedom of religion. How are they losing it?
No, I keep expecting to see all these states. We've got like 31 states now that permit same-sex marriage, and I keep looking for all the mass divorces and broken homes and things like this showing up any day now on the news, and I keep getting disappointed on that.
And interesting to me to watch the shift. Back, say, in the 40s, there was very strong opposition if you were in certain churches, if you were divorced.
Yeah.
But if you think of the churches as partly a business and a huge denomination as a corporation, you've got to come to terms with your customers. And if they're divorced, your theology is going to change. And the theology of divorce in this country has changed. It's modified.
In many respects, yes, but I remember Richard and Nixon talking about the silent majority. Well, so far the silent majority isn't so silent.
Not so silent. Okay.
because of all the hoopla going along for and against same-sex marriage.
Your earlier point was very well taken, is that part of conflict resolution is better communication and trying to understand each other. And what is it that bothers right-wingers primarily? And my guess is not just one thing, because right-wingers are made up of individuals, and so they have many concerns, and they're not all the same. One of which is they listen to some preachers tell them that they are being denied their freedom, which is a fabrication. They are not being denied their freedoms. They are free to carry on their lives. What they are being denied is the right of some of the preachers to control the lives of other people. And
that is, I think, what is upsetting mostly the preachers.
I think so. Yes.
Because they seem to think that that's somehow imposing government standards onto them. Well, I disagree with that 100%.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for calling in. You've got some good things to think about. Have you got another point before we go?
No, I think I pretty much covered it.
Okay, well, I appreciate you calling in. Again.
Have a good one.
Good to hear from you, Charles.
Well, we were talking about vulnerability because we all share this, whether we're right-wingers, left-wingers, and I think I made a distinction in this country between liberal and left-wing and between conservative and right-wing. I don't think the right wing is conservative, and I don't think the left wing is liberal. Now, I haven't gone into this in detail on this program, but I think the left wing and the right wing are much closer to each other than they are to anybody else or to any other group. And I think liberalism and conservatism have very much in common. And most people that I know are both conservative and liberal. And that's why a conservative like Senator Dirksen could work with a liberal like Edward Kennedy, because they had they had common values. Now, they had some points in which they disagreed. That's why one's liberal and one's conservative. But they had enough values in common, so they belong to a greater group of what I'd call rational discourse without resorting to violence. And the right wing and the left wing, I think, are much closer to each other.
Well, do you think it would be a disservice to apply these names to people who may not be all that different?
Well, yeah. It's we need to define these words for one thing, and then see if they fit. I would define a conservative, and by taking the word, we conserve the values that have helped make us a viable community, like respect for each other's opinions, even when we disagree. You could call that a conservative value. We want to conserve that. In fact, good conservatism would say, here the liberals develop new values, and then we conservatives try to conserve them. So they work together. You have to conserve the older values that have developed. And you need to develop. You need to have openness, develop new values and new opportunities, and then interact between conservative and the liberal in both of us to see how we make this operate.
So what about the judgment that certain people are not conservative enough?
Well, we'd have to find out in a specific situation what they're talking about. And I want to emphasize the word specific,
Well, might this be again using the emotional appeal of,
Exactly.
Of certain words?
I see your point is sometimes these words just have an emotional appeal to the point of having a conflict rather than resolve our conflicts.
But it would be a long and tedious job to go into the entire belief system of a conservative, but somehow or other they avoid this by using the emotional effect of.
Well, here's a good example. Would you agree that people who are sometimes called conservative work with you on common problems on a local level so that that issue doesn't even come up? You're just solving problems. And so for us to generalize that conservatives as a group are all like this, or liberals all a group like this, that doesn't make a lot of sense. For example, you could argue, you could make a strong case that believing in the possibility of abortion is a conservative value. You want to conserve the values that you have. You don't want to bring life in indiscriminately when we already have life here to be taken care of and to conserve. For example, if we have children already born who are not taken care of, then that would seem, if you are a real conservative, it would be the major concern is to conserve the values, to incorporate these children into families, into homes and good schools and so forth. And that's a conservationist approach.
Yeah.
And so we call that liberal, but it seemed to me equally conservative.
Well, Joe, I see the clock is rolling around to time for a program break. In case you are just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions. Shows are live most every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Knoxville Community Access Television Channel 12 or Channel 194, depending on your local cable network. But you can also watch us if you don't have those cables, streaming live online at ctvknox.org, as well as throughout the whole world.
Oh, sure. It's a call-in show, and we are alive, and our viewers call in now, and you can see the number on the screen, and give us some information and points of view. And you can see it on the screen. And go.
And well, Sam, could you play our promotional videos?
If you live in or around the Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else, well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun. Do you find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org.
Okay.
This is the Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK, meets 2 times each week. Which
Twice.
two times each week, and have evening meetups for food, drink, and conversation. Ask Purpose is to supply a venue for community, camaraderie, and outreach to atheists, agnostics, freethinkers, and other like-minded persons in the East Tennessee area. Our Tuesday meeting is going on right now
At Barley's, yeah.
at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria in the Knoxville Old City.
And the Rationalists of East Tennessee has Sunday activities with presentations on discussions and subjects that are topical. Once a month we get together for book club. You need not have read the book, but of course it helps. Visit rationalist.org to find the rest of the calendar of books. And join us at a book a month.
Books a Million.
Books a Million, you're right. And that's on Kingston Pike, 8513 Kingston Pike, every second Sunday at 2 p.m. Right?
Second Sunday of the month.
Second Sunday, sorry.
Okay. The topic for next month in February, and it falls early on the 8th, is An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth by Chris Hadfield. Now, the blurb that goes along with it says, this is an inspirational memoir of space exploration and hard-won wisdom from an astronaut who has spent a lifetime making the impossible a reality. Colonel Chris Hadfield has spent decades training as an astronaut and has logged nearly 4,000 hours in space. During this time, he has broken into a space station. We'll have to find out about that
means,
with a Swiss Army knife, disposed of a snake while piloting a plane, and been temporarily blinded while clinging to the exterior of an orbiting spacecraft. The secret to Colonel Hatfield's success and survival is an unconventional philosophy he learned at NASA. Prepare for the worst and enjoy every moment of it. Okay, so this is sounds like a delightful topic, and along with it, I guess the cost of this book is fairly nominal online, so you might think about
look at it,
getting it.
Okay, well, let's get back to... go ahead.
Okay, where okay, so both the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalist CVC Tennessee help provide a social outlet where you'll find if you don't believe in God, you are not alone. Okay, and I must say that although we think of the Rationalist as a kind of an atheist organization, humanist organization, that is not a prerequisite. There are people with more theistic viewpoints, and I hope we continue to make them welcome.
Rationalists. In fact, we need to talk a little bit. What's it mean to be rational? Are you willing to talk with me on that?
Oh, I think to be a rational person is to kind of conduct one's activities based on one's experience and evidence of the world around us.
Yeah.
Recognizing that, as we pointed out earlier, there's a degree of emotion in practically anything, any decisions we make.
Oh, yeah.
Still, I think it's important to view approaching.
Would you say that a rational person is passionate about the truth?
I would hope so.
Okay, that's emotion. We got a caller. Go.
Okay, caller, please give us your name or nickname, please.
Hey, this is Faithless Forrest. I'm watching the show today, and so I saw your topic, and I thought, well, maybe I ought to challenge you guys to think about a time where for conflict resolution, you had to do your best to understand the other person's point of view. You know, as a scientist, I see the world and interpret it in terms of evidence, and it's hard for me to understand why people would want to view the world in terms of, you know, books which to me look to be obviously mythology. It's a hard thing to put that into. It's hard for me to put myself into those shoes. What do you guys find difficult?
Okay, yeah, you bring out a really important point. I mean, sometimes we see a view, and I want to emphasize view rather than person, because I want to make a distinction between the view and the person. But we see a view, and it just doesn't seem to make sense at all, you know. And then you say to yourself, but I'm talking to a human being, and I notice in other areas they make good sense, you know. They solve problems. So how could this seemingly very rational human being, fellow human being, hold to such an absurd viewpoint? And then what do you do? Well, the main thing, I think, well, to try to deal with the caller, you try to understand why does it make sense to him? How? What problem is he trying to solve? What's coming of him?
That at times poses big problems for me, Joe, because I then start making judgments about the motives of the other person. Well, why are they taking that position, which to me seems so unreasonable? I mean, when there may be better solutions, and I must say that for that little class of problems, I have difficulty overcoming my judgment, particularly when it deals with, say, moral or ethical values that might be quite different from mine.
From ours, yeah.
Well, let me tell you about, let's say, two items that will be biblical, sort of compare and contrast.
All right.
One would be where, you know, there are people who are going to, you know, literally believe in the literacy of the Bible, and that there was a talking snake that talked to the first two people, and that those two people didn't have parents the normal way. But, you know, then there are going to be other people who say, well, that's metaphorical for something, and then they usually don't bother to explain what that is because there isn't really a good story about it. But then there are other people who are going to take parts of the Bible and just try to stretch them, you know, to say, well, you know, our nation is founded on the Ten Commandments. And that's a very different kind of thing. You know, it's not a claim about talking snakes and two people not born with normal parents. You know, it's more an argument about, you know, it's an argument about how we should live. I don't think it's a well thought out one, but it's rather different than the very supernatural claim of talking snakes.
Is that a way of saying that the latter one fits more with your viewpoint?
Well, I reject both of them, so I'm not quite sure they're where you might have thought that. But they're very different in how I reject them. One
I got you.
Is an argument about how the universe works. It just doesn't mesh with testable reality. And the other is sort of, I don't know, wishing that we can find rules for how to live by just referring maybe kind of in a lazy fashion to some book that they were told is the rule.
Okay, I dealt with this in my teaching a lot, and you don't have a right as a teacher to just overbold your students. You know, that's wrong, it seems to me, because they're students, and you don't just bully students.
So what you're saying is that as a teacher, I couldn't say, well, it's being lazy to...
No. Well, first of all, I don't know that they are lazy, you see. I don't know that. That's looking at people's motives and their inside, and you simply don't have that kind of information to make that statement.
All right, so now we're getting on to the topic of the day, which is how to get into someone else, or the importance of getting into someone else's mind.
And the best, it seemed to me that one way to do this is get inside the viewpoint and the point of view, the beliefs, not the believing, but the beliefs, and follow them point by point to see where they lead, you see. For example, did the snake have a conversation with Adam and Eve? One, well, let's talk about this. Did Adam and Eve learn a language? What was the language? Now, most of us know that we have to learn a language. Were they one day born totally with perfect grammar? Did Adam make no grammatical mistakes on the first day he was created? In other words...
Well, Joe, I must point out that if the Bible be true, Adam was expected to invent names for creatures, you know, from the get-go. What a challenge that would be.
Yeah, exactly. So this view of Adam is greatly different from any human being we're talking about. It looks like an archetype rather than a real human being. And did he court Eve? Or did he just appear in the garden and suddenly Eve walked up and said, well, the Lord God of the universe said, I'm to marry you. Now, this happened at a campus nearby. And you know what the woman said to the guy? I love the answer. She said, well, I'm glad the Lord told you that, and now when the Lord tells me the same thing, we'll get married. Needless to say, the second commandment never came about. In other words, what I'm saying is if you patiently talk with people in great detail about their beliefs to see where they go, it often helps much better for them to see the problems develop than for me to say, well, that's superstition. That's not going to help anyhow for me to say that.
Yeah, but again, going back to the anxieties of life, it's kind of simpler to believe in a parental style deity who's going to protect them from all of the potential fears that that they may have.
Well, that may be why they have it. And then we have to work with people, if that's a big problem for us to do it, to show.
All right, well, let me clear the line. I hope you can get a few more callers here. And thank you for wrestling with my question.
Yeah, I just got through, thank you for calling in. I just got through reading a book, How to Win by Intimidation. And I wanted to find out what this guy was about. He said he had read Ayn Rand's book. And what was interesting to me is after reading this book, I still am not sure what he means by intimidation. He gave a few examples, but he didn't show me. I thought he failed simply to show how you win by intimidation. Most of us know you can alienate people by trying to intimidate them. And if they have any resource for defending themselves, they will resent the heck out of it. And so I don't see that he even made a mythical case. That is, by mythical, that you put in a novel and structure all the setting so that it would make sense. He didn't even do that.
Well, you had mentioned the case of a teacher, and teacher dominating a class, I think from two perspectives. One, as an authoritarian, I'm in charge here and using that power. But there's also intimidation by just throwing out a lot of things that the students might know and kind of snowing them with your importance and as a superior, having superior knowledge.
Oh yeah. Well, if you assign really good books that the students can read, then they may turn out they can find passages you thought you understood, they understood better.
Well, Joe, we have a phone call. We have a caller waiting. Caller, would you please give us your name, or nickname, please?
My name is Jim.
Hey, Jim.
Are you, have you watched our program before, Jim?
No, I haven't. I was just channel surfing, and I happened to fall upon this station a few moments ago when the gentleman in the tie was making a comment that I absolutely have to agree with about. It's absolutely true. Everyone on the right are by no means conservative, truly conservative, and by no means are everyone on the left truly liberal. Some people I know on the left are quite bigoted, which is on various things, which is about as far as from being liberal, in a good sense the word liberal is that you can get. It seems to me that in our media-saturated society today, we have a situation where each wing strives to define the other by the worst or most extreme actions or positions of the other. And these various media outlets provide a great big platform for this, and it's kind of sad in a way, but that's the way it is. Also, sort of on the same vein, I'd like to say I find some skeptics to be quite closed-minded. They can be on one various issues or another. Personally, I try, and maybe I don't always succeed, but I try to be an open-minded skeptic. That's a phrase I like. I'd like to see everybody try to be an open-minded skeptic when examining whatever issue they happen to be examining.
Are you saying you're not a true believer skeptic?
Say again?
You're not a true believer skeptic?
No,
I got you.
I'm not a.
Like that.
I don't know. I think some skeptics set out to disprove rather than to examine.
Yeah, I regard skepticism as a part of believing. In other words, I want to have good beliefs. I don't want to go through life just a skeptic. I want to have some good, solid beliefs. But part of believing is to have good, healthy skepticism. Because
I agree with you.
So where are you from?
Here in Knoxville.
Oh, right here.
I am not an atheist or an agnostic, but not a Bible thumper either, or any of those things. I just think as human beings, we need to be constantly examined. Let me very briefly offer.
Sure.
I think this will pass muster. Offer a slight alternative to the creation story.
Yeah, sure.
It goes like this. God decided he needed to do something, so he decided to create woman. And he created this beautiful woman, and she had, her bosom was perfectly symmetrical, except there were 3 breasts instead of 2. And God asked, "What do you feel about this?" And she said, I don't know. It just doesn't look right. So God reached down and plucked out one of her breasts and left her with 2. And or rather, Eve plucked one out and was left with 2. And God said, "How do you like that?" And she said, "That's good, but I got a question. What on earth am I going to do with this useless boob?" And God created man.
Okay, we've got to go now. It's time past time to start wrapping up. This has been a Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. We would like to have your feedback. Leave voicemail at 865-272-9060 or email us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.